The Seattle Seahawks were one of the most surprising teams in football last year. Everyone wrote off not only the Seahawks, but also Geno Smith. There was a long period where Seattle was one of those teams to beat, and they even did win a Super Bowl, but that was a long time ago now. There was a lot less success later in the Russell Wilson era, and that ultimately led to him being traded. But it didn't matter, because Seattle went on last season to still make the playoffs, mainly thanks to still the great coaching of Pete Carroll and kind of a wild card, Geno Smith. Nobody expected anything from Geno Smith last year. I, like a lot of other people, thought that Drew Lock was eventually going to take over, but I was very wrong. Geno Smith was great. He had a career-high 69.8 completion percentage with 4,200 yards and 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. It was the best year of his career, and it's not even close. But can he actually do it again? Well, I don't know. That's going to be the big question this season. For the first 9 years of his career, Geno Smith wasn't anything special. That's why he was a backup for so long, but he was legitimately playing at an elite level last year. It wasn't like he was getting carried or anything either. Geno was straight up balling. It got him a 3-year, $75 million extension this offseason. But there is still some wiggle room there on that deal if the Seahawks want to get out of it early. Now, Geno is good. He's fine, but he isn't the actual long-term option at quarterback. He's already 32, and at some point, the Seahawks will have to move on and go young. But for now, I think he'll be good again this season. And the biggest reason why is probably because there's so much talent around him. When you look at the Seahawks offense, the first thing that immediately sticks out is their wide receivers. They have an insane 1-2-3 punch. DK Metcalf has kind of taken over that number one role, and man, he's been good. In his first 4 years in the league, he hasn't had a season with less than 900 yards. DK has 2 seasons with double-digit touchdowns and has 2 1,000-yard seasons, including last year when he pretty much proved that he didn't need Russell Wilson to hold his hand. Now, you could argue that DK isn't even actually the one in Seattle. Tyler Lockett has actually had over 1,000 yards every single year DK Metcalf has been in Seattle, so it's kind of hard to say. Lockett has 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and he hasn't had less than 8 touchdowns in a season since 2017. Lockett isn't just a dog, he's actually quietly one of the most underrated guys in the league. Now, having DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as your top 2 guys is very, very promising, but the Seahawks decided to make their wide receivers even better at the draft using a first-rounder on Jackson Smith-Njigba. A lot of people, like myself, thought Smith-Njigba was the top wideout in the class. He only played 1 full year at Ohio State, but when he did, he was incredible, and that's not even giving him enough credit. He was the top receiver on a Buckeyes team that also had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. He was that good, and now Wilson and Olave have proved themselves as rookies, and it's time for Smith-Njigba to do the same this year. At tight end, the Seahawks have Noah Fant. He came over in that Russell Wilson trade. Fant was actually a first-rounder in 2019, and he had over 500 yards in each of his first 3 seasons in Denver, but had a low 486 yards in 2023, which still wasn't that bad. Now, if you're a fantasy guy, the running backs are really interesting in Seattle, and one of the big names is Kenneth Walker. He was a second-rounder last year, and he went on to record 1,000 yards and scored 9 times as a rookie. He flashed, but that still didn't stop the Seahawks to then take a running back in the second round again, Zach Charbonnet. He was at Michigan before he transferred to UCLA, and he just had 1,000 yards and 13-plus touchdowns in back-to-back years. It also might be worth keeping an eye out on Kenny McIntyre. McIntosh, who was a 7th rounder, but was damn good at Georgia, where he won 2 rings. So the Seahawks do have weapons, but the line is a little bit messy. It was kind of all over the place last year, but overall, I just don't expect it to be that good of a unit. Left tackle Charles Cross should continue to develop. He was the 9th overall pick last year, and he did start in every game as a rookie. At right tackle, Abraham Lucas started all but one game last year for Seattle after he was a 3rd rounder. So Seattle did have 2 completely new tackles in 2022. 2020 3rd rounder Damian Lewis, surprisingly, was actually the best guy on the line last year at left guard. Opposite Lewis should be Phil Haynes, who Seattle took in the 4th round in 2019, but he's actually only started 5 games over 4 seasons. So if he wins that training camp battle, he's really getting his first real shot. Finally, Evan Brown is set to be at center after he's pretty much bounced around the league after being an undrafted guy in 2018. Pretty much, if there is going to be a big problem for the Seahawks and Geno Smith specifically, it's probably going to be the offensive line. For now, it only feels right to start talking about the Seahawks defense at linebacker with a not very new newcomer, Bobby Wagner. Not only did Bobby Wagner win that one Super Bowl with Seattle, but he was a beast for 10 years for them. He's a 9-time All-Pro, including last season, his lone year away from Seattle with the Rams after the Seahawks released him, but now he's back after just 1 year. It may only be for 1 season, who knows, but everything does kind of feel right again with Bobby Wagner back in Seattle. Now, that doesn't mean the front 7 is good now, though. Seattle lost 2 of their top pass rushers, Quentin Jefferson and Shelby Harris. They do still have Uchenna Nwosu at outside linebacker. Overall, that front 7 was just a really middle-of-the-pack group last season, and I think it's probably going to slip to maybe be a little worse in 2023. The Seahawks did sign Draymond Jones to a 3-year, $51 million contract. He was pretty good in Denver. I don't know what it is with that Seattle and Denver connection, but he's another guy. Opposite him is Jaron Reed. He's back in Seattle after he spent the first 5 years of his career with the Seahawks. That front 7 is just not that special, but the secondary might be and should be. They've improved a ton, and that's mostly because of cornerback. Tariq Woolen really just came out of nowhere last year as a 5th-round rookie, and he was great. Seattle wasn't even done there, though. In April, the Seahawks drafted Devin Witherspoon. He was considered a top corner in the class after his time in Illinois, and he ended up going 5th overall. It was actually that pick that the Seahawks got for Russell Wilson. Then behind them, the Seahawks still have Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, who are one of the best safety duos in the league. They're proven, and this secondary should easily be top 10 if it stays healthy. It's really hard to actually predict what's going to happen in the NFC West, but it seems like it's essentially a 2-team race for the division crown between the 49ers and Seahawks. Now, the Cardinals are going to suck. They aren't very talented, and they won't even have Kyler Murray week 1 probably. They're entering this new era with Jonathan Gannon as their new head coach, and it's probably going to be ugly, maybe for a long time. The Rams are interesting though. They should be better than last season, and remember they did literally win a ring 2 seasons ago, but injuries killed them, and they aren't even that talented. They have big name guys. They have Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, but there isn't much depth on the team, so it's really hard to imagine them being too good. That leaves San Francisco. They're in this weird spot with 3 quarterbacks that could all start. Maybe it's Brock Purdy, or Trey Lance, or Sam Darnold. I don't know. That's what makes them so interesting. They have an amazing defense, and they're loaded on offense too, so it is hard to see them not being good again. I personally think, like last year, the 49ers and Seahawks are both playoff teams. It's kind of just a matter of who wins the division. The 49ers, I think, are better, and they are the favorites on DraftKings at -160, and the Seahawks are right behind them there at +195. That leaves the Rams at +1,000 and the Cardinals at +2,500, which is actually the worst odds to win a division by any team this year by a ton. Yeah, they're supposed to be really bad. The Seahawks should be good, yes, but I don't think they're gonna be a real contender. They have a lot of talent, and they're gonna be a lot of fun to watch, and they're good, but they're not great. So honestly, I just don't expect too much from them.